In the way that Moshe recounts the events of the Midbar to the Jewish people, we can glean a great chizuk in our emunah, in the Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the way that Moshe recounts the events in the Midbar to the Jewish people, to Klal Yisrael, we can glean a great chizuk in our emunah. We see a similar theme again and again in the way that Moshe tells over the events to the Jewish people. We see this many times, but I just want to quote a couple of psukim which bears this out. We see in this week's Parsha, in Perek Beis, Pasuk Zayin, says as follows. Moshe says to the Jewish people, it's at the end of the 40 years, he's recounting all the different things that occurred, the good things, the bad things, and he says as follows. He says, Ki Hashem Elokecha be'racha, Hashem your God blessed you, b'chol ma'aseh yadecha, in all the work of your hands, Yada lechtecha, he knew your way, as Hamidbar Gadol Zeh, through this great desert. Zeh arbaim shana, these 40 years, Hashem Elokecha imach, Hashem your God was with you, lo chasarta davar, you were not lacking anything. In the way that Moshe recounts the events of the Midbar to the Jewish people, we can glean tremendous chizuk in our emunah. We see that at the end of 40 years in the desert, toward the end of Moshe's life, Moshe Rabbeinu is recounting all the different things that happened in the desert. And he uses, the way he said it over to the Jewish people, he says in this similar theme again and again. I want to read to you the pasuk and how he said it. The pasuk says in this week's Parsha, in Perek Beis, Pasuk Zayin, says, Hashem blessed you with all the work of your hands. Yada lechtecha samidbar agadol hazeh. He knew the way in the desert, in this great desert. Zeh barim shana, these 40 years. Again, it's like the last week or so of Moshe's life. Hashem elokecha imach. Hashem was with you. Lo chasarta davar. You did not lack anything. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say that I saw that you didn't lack anything. Moshe, meaning the Mun, the Anani Kavod, the Be'er Miriam, all the needs that were, all the miraculous, the needs that were taken care of, that Hashem took care of for the Jewish people in such miraculous ways throughout all these 40 years. Moshe didn't say that I saw that. Moshe said you saw that. You were there, and you saw that, and nobody disputed that, which is great testimony to the truth of these events, because you can't tell somebody that you saw it if you didn't see it. You could tell somebody that I saw it and try to convince him that you saw it, that I saw it, and now let me convince you that what I saw was true. That is possible. But nobody can convince somebody that they saw something if they didn't really see it. So that means that this first generation in the Midbar, these events occurred to them. And these events were true. It's a great chizuk when we think about it. And let's take it a step further. We see in next week's Parsha that the pasuk says in Perek Dalet Pasuk Tes, Rak yishamar lecha, you should be careful, shmor nafshecha ma'od, and guard your soul very much, pentishkach es Devorim, lest you forget these matters, these things, talking about all the different events in the Midbar. Shero anecha, that your eyes saw, that, again the same theme, that your eyes saw. Ufen yasuru milvavcha, and lest it gets removed from your hearts, kol yimei chayecha, all the days of your life, meaning what, these events that you saw. V'odatim levanecha, the Torah, Moshe commands us in the Torah to make it known to our children, to pass along these events to our children, v'levnei vanecha, and to our grandchildren. Now, it's one thing to try to convince somebody that something occurred to them which did not occur. That's impossible. It gets exponentially more difficult when you tell those same people about an event that you want to say didn't happen. Now tell that event that didn't happen, tell it to your children and pass it along to your children and your children's children, the event that you saw. Impossible. So, and what do we see? What practically played out throughout our long history? These events happened around 3,300 years ago. Throughout a long history of these 3,300 years, there were times of peace, but it was tumultuous and pogroms and persecution and golus and kicked out of lands and holocausts and Spanish Inquisitions. We weren't a very settled people. And yet we stuck by this commandment, pass it down to your children, to the extent that if you look throughout history, now we're in the world of one click and you can see from one side of the world to the other. Maybe it's what the Nevuah says, that in times of Mashiach we'll be able to see from one side of the world to the other. But be that as it may, that's today. But go back 100 years, go back 500 years. People were separated, they never saw it. Getting a piece of mail across from one country to another was like, very rare occurrence. In fact, the Yemenite Jews, we all know, were separate from the rest of the Jewish people for about 2,000 years. And yet the Torah that they had and the Torah that the Ashkenazim had and the Torahs that other Sephardi communities had and different other various communities had, basically exactly the same. There was a couple of spelling mistakes, a couple of spelling differences. That's it, and a couple. That's it. A couple of spelling differences that made no difference in any practical halacha. So over these thousands of years of separation and persecution, we see that the Jewish people lived by this commandment of passing it down, passing it along. It's impossible to perpetrate such a hoax on such a vast scale throughout every country in the world. You're going to find every Torah is exactly the same. And in that Torah it writes that you saw these events. And you saw these events, and now pass it down to your children. These two ideas of that you saw it and you pass it down, and we see how it played out, that our ancestors did pass it down from all different stripes and all different types of Jews. It's testimony. It's such strong testimony to the veracity and the truth of the events of the Torah. It should be such a great strengthening of our emunah. We live in difficult times, but we know that if we hold on to the Torah and we don't let go, this will take us through Mirz Hashem to the times of Mashiach. And I just want to end with one thought in these difficult days of the 9 days. I'll summarize the Gemara. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva was walking with some other Tanoim, and they were walking by the Har HaBayis, by the place of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. It wasn't destroyed long before. All the other Tanoim were crying when they saw foxes running through the Kodesh Kodashim. Rabbi Akiva was laughing. So they said, "Why are you laughing, Rabbi Akiva? We're in such a sad state and such a terrible situation." So Rabbi Akiva said, "Why are you crying?" They said, "Well, why are we crying? I just told you we're in the side of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, what should we do? We should laugh. Of course, we're crying." So Rabbi Akiva says, "For the same reason you're crying is the same reason I'm laughing, because there was two prophecies. One prophecy said that the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. Just quick, that's more in detail, but that's the basic idea. And one prophecy says that it will be rebuilt. When I see that the one prophecy was fulfilled, I know the other prophecy will be fulfilled. And therefore, that's why I'm laughing, because seeing, it's terrible event and a terrible occurrence, and terribly said that the Beis HaMikdash right now is destroyed. But I'm looking to the future, and I know that if this nevuah, this prophecy took effect and came true, that I know the other prophecy will come true as well, and the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt b'meir of Yameinu." So, with this chizuk and amunah, and with this idea that Rabbi Akiva taught us, we should come into Tisha B'Av. It should be a moed. It should not end up being. We should not have to fast. We should have the rebuilding of the third Beis HaMikdash. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.